The morning sun filtered through the faded blue curtains of the Lincoln Grove Elementary front office. Harper Evans stood beside the coffee pot, sipping the weak, watery brew every school seemed to serve. Her eyes scanned the halls, a mother's gaze, sharpened by years on the force and countless sleepless nights. Next to her sat Ranger, her silent partner, a retired K-9 German shepherd with graying fur on his muzzle and a scar under his left eye. Ranger never barked at kids, never growled at teachers, but he watched everything. Outside the playground was a mosaic of backpacks, sneakers, and the squeal of children bursting out into the last bell. Dismissal time, the most chaotic, vulnerable hour in any school day. Harper's hand fell to Ranger's head, feeling the warmth and quiet tension beneath his coat. She'd grown used to his presence, not just as backup, but as a kind of emotional compass. Ranger could sense when she was anxious, her breathing quickening, her mind replaying old mistakes. She trusted him, maybe more than she trusted anyone. Today, the routine felt safe, until a man she'd never seen before loitered by the fence near the pickup zone. He wore a wide-brimmed hat pulled low, sunglasses that seemed too dark for the afternoon light. His jacket was zipped up, odd for spring, and a faint, sour odor carried over the breeze. As Harper moved closer, Ranger's ears pricked, his body stiffened, Harper's pulse followed suit. She let her hand fall to the taser at her hip, not out of habit but instinct. The man knelt, beckoning to a little girl clutching a pink unicorn backpack. Allie Watkins. Harper recognized her from safety patrol training, shy, slow to smile, but quick to trust adults. The man crouched low and said something Harper couldn't hear over the screech of tires and the crowd. That's when Ranger let out a low, guttural growl, a sound Harper had only heard once before, on a night she'd almost lost her own daughter. She stepped forward, her voice steady but laced with steel. "Excuse me, sir, can I help you?" The man looked up, his face tight with an awkward smile. "I'm just here to pick up my niece," he said, holding out a driver's license. "Allie, her mom asked me to get her." Harper studied the ID. The name matched the school records, but the picture didn't quite line up. Older, thinner, a slight difference in the jawline. Ranger circled, planting himself firmly between the man and Allie, teeth bared in a silent warning. The girl's eyes darted to Harper, confusion flickering. Harper knelt down, bringing herself level with Allie. "Do you know this man, sweetheart?" Allie's fingers tightened around the backpack strap. She shook her head. "I don't have an uncle." The words hung in the air, slicing through the noise and routine like a razor. Harper's heart hammered. She reached for her radio, voice measured but urgent. "Front gate, possible attempted abduction. Need backup, now." The man straightened, hands rising slightly. "Hey, this is just a misunderstanding, all right? She must be confused." Ranger growled again, louder this time. Harper kept herself between the man and the girl. The world slowed down. Every sound faded, the laughter, the shouts, the engines in the carpool lane. All Harper could hear was her own heartbeat and the faint rasp of Ranger's breathing. She motioned for the office aide to usher Allie inside. "Go with Miss Ramirez, honey. Right now." The man's expression shifted, uncertainty flickering into something colder, more calculating. He took a step back, hands still raised, but his eyes darted, searching for exits. Harper kept her body loose but ready. "Let's keep this calm, sir. Why don't you come with me and we'll get this sorted with the principal?" He hesitated. Ranger stepped forward, low and steady. The tension crackled, thick as the air before a summer storm. Backup arrived. 2 staff members flanked the doors, another officer jogging from the lot. The man's calm shattered. He bolted. Harper and Ranger gave chase, the German shepherd sprinting ahead, muscles bunching and stretching as if he'd never left the force. The man didn't make it far. By the time he reached the staff lot, he was surrounded. Ranger barked, a sharp, warning snap. Harper approached, cuffs in hand, breath ragged but voice clear. "Hands behind your back." He didn't resist. Maybe he knew it was over. Maybe he just didn't want to tangle with the dog. As she clicked the cuffs, Harper felt the adrenaline fade, replaced by a cold, hollow dread. What if she hadn't been there? What if Ranger hadn't growled? Allie's mother arrived, pale and shaking, clutching her daughter to her chest. Harper watched, fighting the image of her own daughter, Mia, in Allie's place. She squeezed Ranger's neck, burying her face in his fur. He licked her hand, the tremor in his body matching her own. The sun was lower now, shadows stretching across the playground. The normalcy of the day was gone, shattered by a single moment. A growl, a lie, a truth that could not be ignored. Harper led Ranger to the patrol car, the whole school watching. She glanced back at the playground, the students, the teachers. The illusion of safety frayed but not broken. As they drove away, Ranger pressed his head against her shoulder. Harper let herself breathe, just for a moment, and promised herself she would never ignore his instincts again. Harper Evans closed the cruiser door with a click that sounded much louder than it was. The echo lingered in her ears as she turned to look at Ranger, still sprawled out across the back seat, tongue lolling and chest heaving with the fading excitement of the chase. She found herself searching his eyes for any sign, something only a handler would know to look for. There was nothing but the steadfast trust she'd grown to rely on. The school was still buzzing, but a different kind of energy had crept in. A hush, as if everyone were collectively holding their breath. A few teachers clustered by the main entrance, whispering and casting nervous glances her way. Harper knew this feeling. It was the ripple effect of fear. Tiny, invisible threads tightening around each heart, waiting for reassurance that might never really come. She walked the suspect inside. The principal, Mrs. Barrett, stood by her office door, arms folded, face pale. "I called Allie's mom. She's on her way." Harper nodded, keeping her eyes on the man in the hat. No longer so cocky, no longer so sure. He slumped in the chair, a mask of patient resignation stretched across his face, but his fingers tapped out a staccato rhythm on the armrest, a nervous tick that betrayed his calm. She slid his driver's license across the desk to Mrs. Barrett. Did you ever see this man before?" Mrs. Barrett shook her head. "No, never. Allie's mom is single, no uncles, no brothers, no cousins nearby." "Hey, this isn't right, Harper. Not in our school." The air in the room thickened with dread. Harper leaned against the desk, glancing at the badge clipped to her belt, as if drawing strength from the metal. She couldn't help but wonder if she was missing something. Was this just a desperate act by a stranger? Or was it something more calculated? She knelt down beside Allie, who was curled up on the office couch, clutching her unicorn backpack so tight her knuckles were white. "Hey, kiddo, can I ask you something?" Allie nodded, eyes darting away. "Did your mom ever talk about someone coming to get you? Someone new?" Allie shook her head. "Just her. Sometimes my grandma, but she's sick right now. That's it. I don't have any uncles." Harper smiled softly, trying to mask the weight settling in her chest. You did the right thing, Allie. I'm proud of you." She turned back to the man. "So, you want to tell me again how you're related to Allie?" He shrugged, trying to flash a smile, but it was brittle, forced. "Listen, maybe I got the wrong school. My sister's kid looks just like her." Funny," Harper said, leaning in. Allie says she's never heard of you. Why'd you pick her out of all these kids?" His smile vanished. He leaned back, eyes flickering around the room, searching for an escape that wasn't there. "You cops always got to make a big deal out of nothing, huh?" Before Harper could answer, Ranger let out a quiet, rumbling growl from the corner, making the man freeze. Harper decided it was time to check his story the official way. She radioed dispatch, giving them the license and vehicle plates. As she waited, she watched the man's composure slip, inch by inch, as if he were unraveling in real time. Minutes later, her radio crackled. "Harper, this is dispatch. The ID's valid, but there's no record of him at that address. Vehicle registration comes back to a rental. Name's not on file." She fixed the man with a stare. You sure you want to stick with your story? He leaned forward, voice dropping, trying for a note of camaraderie. Look, lady, I'm just here for my niece. It's a misunderstanding. But there was something in his eyes, something that sent a chill through Harper. It wasn't fear, it was calculation, like he was running through options, waiting for her to make a mistake. She had him sit while she stepped out with Mrs. Barrett. In the hallway, Harper whispered, check the visitor logs and security footage. If he's been here before, I want to know. Mrs. Barrett nodded, already dialing her security team. Harper's mind raced. Allie's story checked out. The man's did not. But what really made her uneasy wasn't just the mismatch. It was how deliberate his actions seemed. He'd waited until the crowd thinned, picked a child who looked vulnerable, used a story that might work just often enough to get lucky. She returned to the office. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to stay here a little longer while we sort this out. He started to protest, but Ranger shifted, rising to his feet, eyes fixed on the man. The message was clear. The man swallowed his words. As the minutes dragged on, Harper replayed every second of the interaction in her mind. Why Allie? Why now? And why Ranger's reaction, so visceral, so instant? The room was quiet, except for the gentle panting of Ranger and the ticking clock on the wall. Finally, Mrs. Barrett returned, a tablet in her hand. You need to see this. She pulled up the security feed. Harper watched as the man circled the playground earlier that day, lingering near the exits, eyes scanning the children. Not just Allie, he watched others too. It wasn't random. He'd been waiting for the perfect moment, blending into the background until he saw an opportunity. Should we call the police? Mrs. Barrett asked, voice trembling. Harper shook her head. Already did. He's not going anywhere. Keep this footage. We'll need it. She turned to Allie, lowering herself to eye level again. You did everything right, and Ranger did too. Allie reached over, tentatively running a small hand over the German shepherd's head. Ranger closed his eyes, soaking in the comfort. For a moment, Harper felt the knot in her chest loosen, but only for a moment. When the city officers arrived, Harper handed over the footage, the ID, the suspect. Everything but the gnawing unease that something much bigger was at play. As she watched the man being led away in cuffs, Ranger pressed against her leg. The school doors closed behind them, locking out the rest of the world. Harper stood there, her breath fogging in the late afternoon air, the certainty settling in her bones. This wasn't over. Not for her, not for Ranger, and not for Allie. As the sun slipped behind the trees and the last car pulled out of the parking lot, Harper knew something else for sure. Sometimes, when your gut tells you something's wrong, it's not just paranoia. Sometimes it's the difference between a regular day and a story that changes everything. Rain began to spatter the station windows, a gentle percussion that underscored the tension in Harper Evans's chest. She leaned against the interrogation room wall, arms folded, Ranger sprawled at her feet, like a sentry who refused to rest. The hallway outside pulsed with voices, officers discussing logistics, a dispatcher calling out a code, the steady hum of printers. But inside the room, there was only the low fluorescent buzz and the man's steady, stubborn silence. Harper watched the suspect, still Mr. Watkins, according to the fake ID, sitting across from her at the metal table. His hat and jacket had been confiscated, leaving him stripped of his disguise and defenses. The man's face was blank, eyes cast down, as if he could will himself invisible. Beside the table sat the bag he'd carried. Brown canvas, scuffed at the corners, a cheap model you could buy at any gas station on the interstate. Yet when Harper had first picked it up, something about its weight felt wrong, not just heavy, deliberate. She waited as Detective Alvarez entered the room, gloves snapping, evidence bag ready. Let's see what he didn't want us to find, Alvarez muttered, shooting Harper a look. He unzipped the bag with practiced care. Out came a tangle of objects, each one more disturbing than the last. A roll of zip ties, several chloroform wipes sealed in clear plastic, A burner phone, scratched and battered, but powered off. At the bottom, a child's plastic bracelet, faded yellow, bearing the name Hannah in pink block letters. Harper's stomach clenched. She recognized the bracelet. Her mind flashed back to an email from a missing persons bulletin a month ago. Phoenix, Arizona. Girl, age 7, last seen wearing a yellow bracelet. The press had printed her picture, a little girl with a gap-toothed smile and sunburnt cheeks. Hannah. Harper caught Alvarez's eye. He's no uncle. He's not even from around here. Check that phone. Fast. Alvarez nodded, already reaching for an evidence kit to bag each item. Harper stepped back, letting Ranger nose the air, his posture rigid. Something in the room had set him on edge again, fur bristling. The man still didn't speak. Harper studied him, searching for the telltale signs, the rapid pulse in his neck, the sweat gathering at his hairline, the twitch of a jaw. But mostly she saw a flatness, not fear, not guilt, just calculation, a man who had run this scenario in his head countless times and was still waiting for the right moment to make a move. She pressed forward, voice low but hard. You want to tell me why you have zip ties and chloroform in your bag? Why you have a child's bracelet that doesn't belong to anyone here? His eyes flicked to hers, holding for a heartbeat. Then he smiled, a thin, humorless twist of the mouth. Don't know what you're talking about. Alvarez's radio chirped. Tech from the back room. He left with the evidence bag, the door shutting behind him with a click that made Harper flinch. The room felt smaller now. Harper kept one hand near her belt, the other resting on the table. She leaned in. You picked Allie for a reason? You knew the routine? Knew who would be there to meet her. Who wouldn't? That's not random. And you've done this before. He shrugged, but Harper could see the gears turning. He was thinking, always thinking, trying to stay 2 moves ahead. She continued, softer now. What happened to Hannah? A flash of something, regret, anger. It was gone too fast to name. He looked away. Harper let the silence stretch. She'd learned that over years on the force and even longer as a mother. Sometimes the best way to get the truth was to let it hang in the air, heavy as rain. Minutes passed. Finally, the door opened and Alvarez slipped back in, eyes grim. He placed a printout on the table. Burner's full of texts, coded, but we're working on it. There's also a flash drive in the lining of the bag. Might be more. Harper picked up the flash drive, turning it over in her hand. She wondered what secrets it held. Photos, notes, a ledger of victims. The possibilities made her stomach turn. She looked back at the suspect, her tone ice cold. You're not going anywhere. We know who you are. You're Derek Monroe. And you're wanted in at least 3 states for attempted abduction. And maybe worse. His jaw tightened. The name had landed, and for a split second, Harper saw the truth. He knew the game was up. But then his composure snapped back in place, as if he'd pulled a mask down over his face. Alvarez started reading him his rights. Harper stepped into the hallway, exhaling slowly. She pressed her back against the cinder block wall, fighting the urge to sink to the floor. Her hands shook. Ranger nudged her hip with his nose. Harper sank to a crouch, letting her fingers trace the line of his muzzle. You were right, buddy, she whispered. Always trust the dog, huh? Down the hall, Mrs. Barrett's heels clicked rapidly against the tile. She looked shaken. Harper, are we safe? Is Allie safe? Harper nodded. We got him, but I need you to run through your records. See if anyone else has checked in with a fake story, or if anyone's been watching the kids. Mrs. Barrett nodded, eyes wide with worry, and hurried away. Harper watched her disappear around the corner, then stood and squared her shoulders. She couldn't afford to fall apart. Not yet. Back in the interrogation room, Monroe refused to say another word. Settling in for the long haul. Harper knew this was just the tip of the iceberg. The bag wasn't just a collection of tools. It was a statement, a predator's kit, assembled piece by piece for one purpose. She replayed the morning in her mind, The way the man had picked Allie out of the crowd, the false calm, the too friendly smile. What if Ranger hadn't been there? What if Allie had hesitated just a second longer? The weight of it pressed down on her, cold and merciless. She looked at Ranger, meeting his brown eyes. "We're not letting this go," she murmured. "Not for her, not for any of them." Outside, the rain fell harder, beating the windows in relentless sheets. The world was still turning, cars still passing, parents still lining up to pick up their children at other schools, oblivious to how close they'd all come to disaster. But Harper felt changed, as if something fundamental inside her had shifted. This wasn't just about Lincoln Grove anymore. This was bigger, an infection spreading beneath the surface of safe neighborhoods and small-town routines. As she made her way to her desk, Ranger at her side, she found herself thinking of her own daughter. Mia's shy laugh, the way she clung to Harper's arm at bedtime. For a split second, Harper imagined Mia's name on that bracelet, her picture in the news, a desperate plea on some mother's lips. She shuddered, pushing the thought away. Tonight, she wouldn't be able to sleep. She knew that already. Tonight, she would sit at the kitchen table long after Mia was in bed, scrolling through old case files and missing children's posters, searching for patterns that might connect to Derek Monroe. Tonight, Ranger would sleep at her feet, his breathing a reminder of loyalty and instinct, the only constant in a world suddenly full of shadows. But tonight, at least, Allie was home, safe. And somewhere in Phoenix, a mother might finally have an answer. Harper pulled her coat tight, ready to face the next wave, whatever it brought. She'd cracked open something that couldn't be closed. The real story was just beginning. The fluorescent lights in Harper's office cast a hard edge on everything. The paperwork, the coffee stains, the bags under her eyes. Even as dusk crept across the parking lot, inside, the world remained starkly illuminated, no shadows to hide the doubt that gnawed at her. She scrolled through surveillance footage on her laptop, Ranger's head resting quietly on her shoe. Each frame showed children spilling out of classrooms, backpacks bouncing, parents waving from car windows. Harper's finger hovered over the pause button, mind replaying the day in slow motion. She was searching for something she couldn't yet name. The flash drive recovered from Monroe's bag was being combed by the tech unit downtown. Meanwhile, her inbox filled with reports. Monroe's fingerprints linked to out-of-state warrants, missing person cases cross-referenced with every new clue. It felt like trying to stitch together a quilt in the dark, hands trembling, fabric fraying at the edges. Her phone buzzed. Detective Alvarez. His voice was a low murmur through the static, tense but controlled. "Harper, you need to come see this. It's not just about a day." She grabbed her jacket, signaled Ranger, and headed for the precinct's digital forensics lab. The air in the building was electric with anticipation, every step echoing with urgency. Inside the lab, a team of techs hunched over monitors. One screen displayed lines of code, another flashed images, schoolyards, playgrounds, children's faces caught in candid, unaware moments. The content of Monroe's flash drive was being decrypted in real time, each folder revealing more than the last. Alvarez gestured for her to come closer. He wasn't acting alone. He's got files on schools all across the county, times, student schedules, notes on pickup routines, even teachers' names. And look at this. He's using a database to target kids. The drive's full of spreadsheets, facial recognition logs, chat records. Harper's stomach tightened. She clicked through the folders, her mind racing. Some files were named after local schools, others referenced towns hundreds of miles away. One folder, Lincoln Grove Targets, was a gut punch. It listed student names, photos, ages, routines. Allie's name appeared near the top, marked as prime. Quiet, predictable, rarely met by more than one adult at pickup. She scrolled farther. Other names, children Harper had seen every day, faces she'd greeted with a wave or a smile, listed with cold, clinical precision. A part of her recoiled at the calculated way these children had been reduced to data points. Alvarez read her mind. We found versions of these lists posted on encrypted forums. It's a trafficking network. There's chatter about prime students, how easy they'd be to lure, what their weaknesses are. Harper forced herself to keep looking, cataloging every detail, every face. She tried to imagine what would drive a person to organize this, to sell children like products in an online catalog. Her hands clenched into fists. Ranger pressed closer, as if he could sense the storm inside her. His steady breathing reminded her of the here and now, of Allie, safe at home, and the threat that lingered for so many others. One video file made her stop cold. Security footage from a different elementary school, just 2 towns over, showed a man in a ball cap circling a playground, phone out, eyes scanning the crowd. He wasn't Monroe. The timestamp was just a week old. Harper realized with a sick jolt that this was no isolated attempt. Monroe was part of a network. There were others, maybe more, at work right now. She turned to Alvarez. "We need to notify the FBI. This is bigger than anything we can handle alone." Alvarez nodded, already dialing. "I'll set up the call. We need them in Irid in this now." Harper leaned in, voice low, urgent. "Send every school in the district an alert. Tell them to review their surveillance, their visitor logs, anything out of place." As Alvarez relayed the message, Harper's mind spun through what-ifs and regrets. She thought about her own daughter, Mia, and the thin line between safety and disaster. She imagined parents hugging their kids goodnight, not knowing how close the darkness had come. Within the hour, 2 FBI agents arrived. Sharp suits, clipped voices, but eyes full of concern. They gathered around the evidence table, scrolling through the drive's contents, comparing notes from recent missing child cases across the state. "We've seen this pattern before," one agent said, his voice heavy. "These people move fast, they use burner phones, aliases, change vehicles constantly, and they never work alone. Yeah, Monroe was a cog in a machine. There are more out there, right now, looking for the next opportunity." Harper nodded, fatigue settling into her bones. They had Allie marked as a target. That's not random. They're profiling the schools, the kids, the schedules. We have to warn every family, every teacher. We can't keep pretending that this stuff only happens somewhere else. The agents exchanged glances. "We'll need to coordinate a countywide alert, and we're going to need your help. Someone on the ground who knows the routines, the blind spots." For the first time since the arrest, Harper felt a flicker of hope. She wasn't powerless. She was angry enough to fight back. As the briefing broke up, Harper lingered, staring at the endless lists of children's names. Ranger sat at her side, eyes fixed on her, as if waiting for a sign. She bent down, voice barely a whisper. "We're not stopping, boy. Not while this is still out there." Her phone buzzed again. A school principal from the other side of town, frantic, breathless. "Officer Evans, I think we just had a man matching your suspect's description hanging around the playground. Security footage is uploading now." Harper's pulse spiked. She could see the threads connecting, tightening. This was just the beginning. She thanked the principal, hung up, and rose to her feet. There was no more room for doubt or hesitation. Somewhere, right now, another child was at risk. She straightened her badge, gave Ranger a nod, and headed back out into the night, ready to hunt down every last shadow. It was nearly midnight when Harper Evans finally sat behind her desk again, the office dark, except for the glow of her laptop screen. Outside, the parking lot was empty, just a sheen of rain and the hush of wind in the trees. Ranger lay at her feet, chin resting on his paws, eyes tracking every slight movement in the room. The school, usually a beacon of noise and routine, now felt hollow, a shell that had failed to keep out the world's dangers. Harper's inbox kept pinging. District administrators, anxious parents, even old friends sending messages that all started with the same line. "I heard what happened. Is it true?" She didn't answer them. There was too much to do, too much still unknown. A new email arrived marked, "Urgent," from the FBI. The subject line, "Child Targeting Network, active profiles in your district." Harper's chest tightened as she clicked open the attachment. What stared back at her was more chilling than she'd imagined. A spreadsheet with dozens of names, faces, and descriptions. Students across Lincoln Grove and other schools. Each one had been rated for risk, with chilling notes about who typically picked them up, which days they walked home, which ones never seemed to have a parent watching. She scrolled, recognizing faces. Quiet kids, new kids, children from single-parent homes, or with complicated custody arrangements. Harper felt her vision narrow, her breath growing short. It was systematic, impersonal, and brutally efficient. The profiles weren't just about Allie or Hannah or any single child. They were a web. This wasn't the work of one man lurking outside a fence. It was a marketplace. Ranger's ears flicked. Harper realized her hands were trembling. She pressed them flat against the desk, fighting to regain her composure. She reminded herself of the promise she'd made to Allie, to Mia, to every parent in town. A knock came at the door. Detective Alvarez slipped inside, eyes heavy with fatigue, but burning with the same anger that now kept Harper awake. "They found more, Harper," he said, dropping a folder on her desk. The Bureau traced Monroe's digital trail. He was using encrypted forums on the dark web, selling and swapping information on kids like trading cards. He paused, collecting himself. They've been building these lists for years, mining social media, school websites, anywhere parents post about their kids. They have algorithms to flag the most vulnerable. It's sick. Harper didn't speak. She flipped through the folder. Screenshots of forum threads, usernames, prices, lists of prime pickups, and easy marks. It was a grotesque parody of a parent-teacher contact sheet. Alvarez's voice was raw. The feds are working on takedowns, but it's like whack-a-mole. They shut one server down, another pops up. There are cases linked to 3 other states already. We're just seeing the tip of it. A surge of protectiveness rose in Harper, primal and fierce. She pictured Allie's small hand in hers, the quiet trust in Mia's hug at bedtime. She looked at Ranger, who'd never once doubted his instincts. "We have to get ahead of them," Harper said, voice flat. "We warn every school, we get eyes everywhere, and we make sure they know. Lincoln Grove isn't easy prey." Alvarez nodded. "The FBI wants you on their task force for this. Local expertise, someone who knows the routines, someone who's got skin in the game." She hesitated for a second. That phrase, skin in the game, meant more to her than most would guess. After her husband's accident, she'd built her world around keeping Mia safe. She knew how quickly safety could vanish. This time she wasn't waiting for disaster. Here Harper stood, reaching for her jacket, feeling the weariness in her bones, but something sharper driving her forward. "Let's do it." As they left the office, Ranger padded beside her, his gait steady, presence grounding. Together, they entered the main hall, now echoing with the distant hum of late-night cleaning crews and the promise of dawn. They gathered the administrative team and the few remaining teachers, faces etched with worry, eyes darting to the clock, no one wanting to be the one to say it out loud. Their school had been profiled, the routines mapped, their students turned into data points on a predator's spreadsheet. Harper laid out the facts, without sugarcoating. This isn't a random event. We've been targeted. The people behind this are organized. They know our schedules, our weak spots, our habits. The only way we protect our kids is to change everything about the way we think about safety. A silence settled, heavy and absolute. Mrs. Barrett, the principal, spoke up, her voice cracking. "What do we do?" "We close every gap," Harper replied. "We monitor the perimeters, stagger dismissal, check IDs every single time. The teachers rotate who walks out with which class. We keep records of every adult who steps onto school grounds, and we tell the parents the truth. They need to be alert. They need to know what's at stake." A chorus of uncertain nods, but no one argued. Alvarez added, "And we partner with the feds. They'll help sweep devices, monitor the forums, track down leads as soon as they come up. But we have to be their eyes and ears here." The meeting stretched into the small hours, strategy notes scrawled on whiteboards, every scenario, mapped and remapped. At the center of it all was Harper, her calm a mask over a storm inside. When at last she was alone, Harper called Mia's sitter, listening to her daughter's sleepy voice through the phone. "You okay, Mommy?" Harper swallowed, closing her eyes. "Yeah, baby. I'm okay. I love you. You know that, right?" "I love you too, Mommy," Mia whispered, and Harper let those words anchor her as the world spun around her. After she hung up, she crouched beside Ranger, scratching behind his ear. "You knew, didn't you?" she whispered. "You always do." He nudged her hand, his quiet loyalty all the answer she needed. As she stood to leave, Harper glanced back at the walls of the school. Bulletin boards full of handprints and drawings, photos of kids grinning at science fairs and field days. She promised herself, right there in the hallway, that she would not let those smiles be taken by fear. A war had begun. She would fight it, with Ranger at her side, instinct and loyalty as her shield, and the unbreakable love of a mother for every child she swore to protect. And outside, as the first rays of morning crept through the glass, the world felt, just for a moment, a little bit safer. Harper's sleep was shallow, fractured by anxiety and half-remembered dreams. When the phone rang just after sunrise, she was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and Ranger curled beneath her bare feet. The call came from the dispatch line. Her name spoken quickly, the words clipped and urgent. Officer Evans, we've got a possible abduction attempt at Jefferson Elementary. Need you on scene now. Description matches the suspect's network." Harper's heart thudded. She pulled on her uniform with practiced speed, clipped her badge, and whispered a promise to the sleeping house. "I'll be back soon, honey." Mia's bedroom door was shut tight, a stickered fortress of childhood innocence she ached to preserve. Ranger was already waiting at the door, leash in his mouth. Ready, always ready. Rain spattered the windshield as Harper sped through the quiet streets. Lights flashed red and blue outside Jefferson Elementary, parents crowding the sidewalk, teachers herding children back inside. A tight knot of fear twisted in Harper's gut as she scanned the scene. A young teacher flagged her down, voice trembling. It happened so fast. A man tried to coax Olivia Miller into his van, said her mom was hurt. She hesitated. "But then, that dog of yours?" Harper nodded, feeling the adrenaline in her limbs. "Where's she?" In the office with the counselor." The suspect ran when the security guard shouted, "The van's blocked in the lot." Harper unclipped Ranger's leash. "Stay with me, boy. Watch for him." They moved through the chaos together, Harper's senses sharpened by fear and experience. She spotted the white van wedged between two cars, engine still running. An officer already stood by the driver's door, gun drawn. Suddenly, movement. A figure darting behind the van, backpack slung over one shoulder, hoodie pulled low. Ranger's body stiffened, ears up. Harper broke into a sprint, Ranger at her side, the world narrowing to the chase. Her boots pounded wet pavement, adrenaline burned away fatigue. The suspect glanced back, eyes wide, just in time to see the German shepherd closing in. Ranger let out a warning bark, sharp, commanding, primal. The man's bravado shattered. He tossed his backpack, tried to vault the chain-link fence, but Ranger lunged, teeth bared, muscles surging, presence overwhelming. The suspect dropped to his knees, hands in the air. Officers closed in, cuffing him with practiced force. Harper leaned against the fence, chest heaving. Ranger trotted back, tail wagging, as if it were all just another game. Inside, Olivia clung to the school counselor, her small frame racked with silent sobs. Harper knelt beside her, voice gentle. "You did so good, Olivia. You remembered the safety rules, you didn't go with him, and you got help fast." Olivia nodded, eyes shining with tears. "He said my mom was hurt. I almost believed him. But then your dog barked, and I ran away." Harper swallowed the ache in her throat. "That's exactly what you should do. You're so brave." She squeezed Olivia's hand, feeling her own fingers tremble. The teacher hovered nearby, face pale. He'd been watching the playground all week. Nobody noticed. He looked like someone's uncle, you know? Ordinary. Harper's mind flashed back to Allie, to the spreadsheets, the methodical way the network hunted for vulnerabilities. The tactics changed, but the threat was the same. Predators counting on adults, being distracted, trusting faces. Routine. That was how the system failed. In your words, when normalcy dulled, everyone's senses. Back outside, the suspect, shaking, mumbling, his story falling apart with every question, was hustled into a squad car. Ranger sat by the patrol car, tongue lolling, as if he alone understood the true danger had not passed. News traveled fast. By noon, TV crews swarmed the school's perimeter. Parents arrived in waves, frantic, clutching their children, demanding answers. Some thanked Harper. Others shouted about security, about failures, about the world not being safe anymore. And Harper stood on the steps, speaking to each parent as best she could. We caught him. Your children are safe. But you need to talk to them. Remind them of the rules. Watch them. Trust your instincts. This is not the time to let your guard down. The community, shaken to its core, began to rally. By late afternoon, Harper's phone buzzed with messages from other districts. Principals asking for advice, PTA members requesting workshops, parents demanding more officers, more dogs, more vigilance. Harper felt the pressure mounting, but pushed it aside. She watched as a mother knelt in the rain, wrapping her arms around Olivia and refusing to let go. She thought about Mia, her giggle, her stubbornness, her small hand reaching for comfort in the dark. For a moment, Harper let herself feel the exhaustion, the relentless storm of worry, the impossible responsibility. But then Ranger nudged her, eyes bright and unwavering, and she remembered why she couldn't give up. That night, after the paperwork was filed and the last interview conducted, Harper sat in her car with Ranger, hands gripping the steering wheel. The day's events replayed in her mind, every near miss, every moment a child hesitated and made the right choice, every time someone trusted their gut. She realized how fragile safety was, how easily it could be shattered, and how desperately people needed to believe it could be rebuilt. She thought about the accomplice, how quickly he'd folded at the sight of Ranger, how panic had undone whatever plans he'd made. Harper realized then that fear, when aimed in the right direction, could be a powerful weapon. But even more powerful was hope, the belief that together they could fight back. As she drove home, rain pounding the windshield, Harper reached over to scratch Ranger behind the ear. You saved another one today, big guy. He looked at her with old, knowing eyes. She smiled, a weary, grateful thing. At home, she found Mia asleep, clutching her stuffed animal tight. Harper watched her daughter's steady breathing, a reminder of all she was fighting for. Harper whispered a silent vow to the darkness. As long as there were children at risk, as long as there were predators lurking, she would not rest. She would be their shield. And she would never ignore the instincts, hers or Ranger's, that had already saved so many. That night, in a quiet house with a dog at her feet, Harper finally slept, not soundly, but with the comfort of purpose burning steady in her heart. The adrenaline of the previous day lingered in Harper's body like a stubborn ache. Morning sunlight broke through the blinds, sharp and unmerciful, spotlighting Ranger's silhouette curled beside the bed. Harper pressed her hands to her eyes, letting herself breathe in the quiet, the fleeting safety of home, before she faced the world outside. She checked her phone, 3 missed calls, a dozen new messages, and a blinking voicemail from Allie Watkins's mother. Harper hesitated, thumb hovering, the events of the last 48 hours replayed in her mind. The chase, the tears, the trembling hands of parents clutching their children. There was no way back to before, only through. She showered quickly and dressed, movements slow but purposeful, Ranger trailing her step for step. The kitchen was silent except for the gentle whine from Mia's bedroom. Harper tiptoed in, brushing a lock of hair from her daughter's forehead, feeling the fragile warmth of a world she'd nearly lost more times than she could count. As she left the house, she found herself pausing at the door, her hand on Ranger's head, grounding herself. She whispered, "Let's go help them, bub. Boy." The drive to Allie's home was a blur of familiar streets and new fears. The house was small, pale blue, with toys scattered across the porch and a swing creaking in the backyard. Harper took a steadying breath before knocking. Allie's mother, Sarah Watkins, answered. Eyes red-rimmed and exhausted, she hugged Harper fiercely, no words needed. In the living room, Allie sat on the couch, knees drawn to her chest, clutching the unicorn backpack as if it were a shield. Harper crouched beside her. Hey, Allie, how are you feeling? The girl shrugged, gaze fixed on the rug. Silence stretched between them, heavy as lead. Sarah sat beside her daughter, voice breaking. She won't talk about it. Not to me, not to anyone. Harper nodded. That's okay. Sometimes it takes time. You did everything right, Allie. You were so brave. A single tear slipped down Allie's cheek. She looked up, eyes wide. Is he coming back? Harper shook her head gently. No, honey, he's not coming back. Ranger made sure of that. As if on cue, Ranger padded over, sitting at Allie's feet. She reached out a trembling hand, resting it on the German shepherd's head. For the first time, a flicker of a smile. Harper saw herself in Allie's fear, the way she used to flinch at shadows after the accident that took her husband, the endless loop of what-ifs, the sharp pain of realizing how little control you truly have. Sarah's voice was a whisper. How do you get past this? How do you let your child walk out the door again? Harper didn't have an easy answer. You don't, not all at once. You just keep going. You teach them to trust their instincts. You remind them that not all strangers are bad, but some are, and that it's okay to be cautious. You show them that fear doesn't get to decide everything. Sarah nodded, wiping her eyes. And you? You're a mom, too. How do you do it? Harper hesitated, searching for the right words. Honestly, I don't always. Some nights I sit at the end of Mia's bed, listening to her breathe, and I wonder how many other mothers are doing the same. But then I remember the world isn't just danger. Yeah, it's also kindness. It's also hope. She looked at Allie, voice softening. You don't have to talk about what happened, but if you ever want to, I'll listen. Or you can just hang out with Ranger. He's the best listener I know. Allie stroked Ranger's fur, her breathing slowing. Harper watched, feeling a bittersweet pride, knowing that the scars from this week would never truly fade, but hoping they would, at the very least, make Allie stronger. Before she left, Sarah hugged her again, fierce and desperate. Thank you for everything, Harper smiled, weary but sincere. It was Ranger. I just followed his lead. On the drive home, the city seemed changed. School buses rumbling past, parents waiting at the curb, teachers ushering lines of children across the street. The smallest details, once mundane, and now felt loaded with meaning. Harper saw echoes of her own fear reflected in the faces around her, the way people looked twice at unfamiliar cars, the way they squeezed their children's hands a little tighter. That afternoon, Harper sat on the back porch while Mia played in the yard, Ranger dozing in the grass. She watched her daughter move, so free, so unburdened, and felt the ache of love and worry in equal measure. The world had shifted, but her resolve had only sharpened. She opened her laptop, sorting through emails, messages from parents, teachers, even strangers, thanking her and Ranger for what they'd done. Some recounted their own brushes with danger, their own stories of near misses and close calls. Harper replied to each, her words careful, her empathy real. That evening, the local news aired a segment about Ranger, a hero dog who'd protected the children of Lincoln Grove. Harper watched from the couch, Mia curled against her, Ranger's head in her lap. The reporter's voice was bright, the footage full of smiles and handshakes. Harper saw her own face on the screen, tired but determined, and felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. After the news, Mia asked, Mom, are there more bad guys out there? Or? Harper hesitated. Some, honey, but there are more good people, like your teachers, like our neighbors, like Ranger, and like you. Mia smiled, wrapping her arms around Ranger's neck. He's the best dog in the world, Harper laughed, a sound edged with relief. He is. And he's not just ours. He helps everyone. Night fell soft and slow. Harper stood at the window, watching the darkness settle over Lincoln Grove. She thought of Allie, of Olivia, of every child whose world had tilted in the last week. She thought of Sarah, of the questions that never truly have answers. In the silence, she felt Ranger lean against her leg, a wordless comfort, a shared burden. Harper let herself cry then, quietly, the weight of the week breaking through at last. And when she was done, she wiped her tears, squared her shoulders, and whispered into the dark, "We keep going, no matter what." For the first time in days, she allowed herself to hope, not for the world as it was, but for the world they could make. One where fear was met with courage, where loss bred resilience, where instinct and loyalty were enough to keep the darkness at bay. In that quiet house, with her daughter safe and her loyal dog at her side, Harper began to believe again. Dawn crept slowly over Lincoln Grove, brushing the rooftops with tentative gold. Harper Evans, standing by her kitchen window, cradled a mug of black coffee as if it could anchor her to the present. The world outside was waking up, but inside, Harper's mind raced ahead, tallying names, faces, details, every clue still buzzing from the case. Ranger paced at her feet, restless, nose twitching as if he too felt the tension humming in the air. Her phone buzzed. An encrypted text from the FBI task force. "Recovered server. Multiple suspects ID'd. Be ready to move." Adrenaline jolted through Harper's veins. She dressed quickly, tugging on boots and vest, checking her sidearm, eyes lingering a moment on Mia still sleeping, hair tangled on the pillow. Innocent and unaware. "I'll be home soon, sweetheart," she whispered, brushing a kiss on her daughter's forehead. "Promise." Within an hour, she was back at the precinct, briefing room packed with agents, detectives, cyber specialists. Screens displayed faces and names scraped from the cracked dark web forums, buyers, sellers, lookouts, and runners. The digital forensics team explained how Monroe's flash drive had been the key, pointing them to a server farm in rural Nevada, hosting thousands of files, images, student data, chat logs, deals struck in the dark. 4 priority suspects are in state, one agent said, pointing to a map with colored pins. "They're the coordinators for this network. We have warrants. We move now." Harper listened, noting the controlled urgency in every voice. This was the part of police work she both feared and craved. The action, the risk, the hope of finally tipping the scales. Ranger sat at her side, alert, tail tapping quietly against the tile. Their target was a small, nondescript ranch house on the outskirts of town. Harper joined the entry team, her mind running through protocols, what-ifs, worst-case scenarios. They moved in silence. Vehicles fanned out, radios set to low. At the signal, officers breached the door, shouts, boots pounding, the flash of tactical lights slicing through dim rooms. Harper moved with the group, heart hammering, every sense hyper-aware. Ranger was by her side, steady as ever. Inside, the house was a tangle of electronics, wires, laptops, bags half-packed. 3 men and a woman were caught mid-escape. One trying to smash a hard drive, another making a frantic call that never went through. Harper cuffed the woman, eyes burning as she recited Miranda rights, voice clear over the chaos. The scene was over in minutes. Files were bagged, phones and drives secured. In a back room, Harper found what chilled her most. A wall covered in printouts, school rosters, maps marked with routes and times, Polaroids of children clipped in neat rows. She stared at the photos, fury and heartbreak colliding in her chest. Ranger whined, drawing her attention to a closet door. Harper eased it open. Inside, a girl, barely older than Mia, shivering but alive, eyes wide with terror and hope. Harper crouched, holding out her hand. "You're safe now." "My name's Harper. This is Ranger. We're here to help." The girl rushed into her arms, clinging tight. Harper blinked back tears, promising, "No one's going to hurt you again." Not ever. Outside, as officers led the rescued children and arrested suspects to waiting cars, the news broke. Lincoln Grove was on every local channel, parents flooding the police lines with calls of relief and disbelief. For the first time, the narrative shifted, from helplessness to hope. Back at the station, FBI agents logged evidence, their faces hard with exhaustion, but lit by the rare satisfaction of a rescue gone right. Harper slumped in a chair, Ranger sitting tall beside her, as if he alone had willed the operation to succeed. Detective Alvarez found her, a faint smile breaking through his usual reserve. "You did it, Harper. That drive, the dog, the whole thing. You saved lives today?" Harper shook her head, bone-tired but resolute. "We did it. All of us." Ranger nuzzled her hand, sensing her exhaustion, offering the silent comfort only he could give. Harper looked down at him, realizing how many times she'd leaned on his instincts, how often his unspoken warnings had shifted her path. She scratched behind his ear, whispering, "Couldn't have done it without you, buddy." Later, after the paperwork, the interviews, the debriefing with the Bureau, Harper drove home under a sky just beginning to blush with sunset. She called Sarah Watkins, sharing the news that the network was cracking, that Allie and so many others were now safer. Sarah's sob of relief made Harper's eyes sting all over again. Mia met her at the door, arms wide, voice bubbling with excitement. Mommy, Ranger's on TV again. They said you're heroes." Harper dropped to her knees, gathering Mia and Ranger into a single embrace. For a moment, the world narrowed to the warmth of her daughter's hug, the steady weight of the dog's head on her shoulder, the sense that, just maybe, they had turned the tide. Night fell quietly on Lincoln Grove. For the first time in weeks, Harper let herself relax, if only a little. The fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. But tonight, children slept in their beds, not in the dark rooms of strangers. Tonight, she had proof that loyalty, instinct, and courage could stand between innocence and danger, and win. Harper stood at the window, watching the stars blink on, one by one. Ranger pressed close, his eyes never leaving hers. She whispered into the stillness, "Thank you." For the growl, for the courage, for the reminder that sometimes one dog, one good heart, could change everything. And as she drifted into sleep that night, Mia curled up at her side. Ranger a silent sentinel at the foot of the bed, Harper knew that, come what may, they would keep fighting. They would keep saving. And the darkness, for once, seemed just a little less certain of itself. It was nearly a week after the raids when Harper first noticed the shift, a change in the air at Lincoln Grove. Subtle at first, then as plain as sunlight. Fear had not disappeared, but it had been transformed, tempered into something new. Vigilance, unity, hope. The school, once haunted by shadows, now buzzed with a sharper energy. Doors were checked twice, teachers greeted every parent by name, and strangers were met with friendly but firm scrutiny. On Monday, Harper and Ranger arrived early for the assembly in the gym. Posters lined the hallways. Paw Patrol, protecting our schools. Ranger's photo grinned from every one, ears up, tongue lolling, a badge clipped to his vest. The children greeted him with odd excitement, some shy, some bold, but all drawn to the warmth and protection he radiated. Harper stood at the podium beside Principal Barrett, watching the sea of faces. Children, parents, teachers, even a few local reporters. There was a time she dreaded moments like these, the attention and the expectations. Now she felt steadied by purpose, her nervousness muted by the presence of Ranger at her side. Principal Barrett cleared her throat, eyes shining. "This past month, we faced dangers we never imagined. But we also found heroes where we needed them most. He's among our teachers, our police, and especially our very own Ranger." The crowd erupted in applause. Ranger sat tall, tail thumping the floor. A little girl, Olivia, rescued from the attempted abduction, raised her hand and asked if she could give Ranger a treat. Harper nodded, her throat tight as she watched Ranger gently take the biscuit from Olivia's palm, his brown eyes kind. Harper stepped forward, voice clear but soft. I want every one of you to know what happened here was real, and it was frightening. But we did not let fear win. You were brave. You listened to your instincts. You trusted your teachers and your parents. And now, thanks to all of you, we are safer and stronger than ever before. The gym was silent for a moment. Then the applause began, again. Softer this time, as if people were clapping not for the dog, not for the police, but for themselves, for having endured and overcome. After the assembly, Harper walked the halls with Ranger, meeting teachers for the rollout of the district's new Paw Patrol program. Each school would have a retired K-9 assigned for safety, comfort, and early warning, a living shield and companion. Harper explained the plan, listened to concerns, and shared Ranger's story, how his instincts had changed everything. The response was overwhelming. Teachers volunteered for training sessions, parents offered to fundraise for supplies and food, even a local veterinarian pledged free checkups for every service dog in the program. The sense of community was raw and real, a living testament to the town's refusal to be ruled by fear. But beneath the celebration, Harper sensed another change, one inside herself. She no longer saw every stranger as a threat, every shadow as a warning. She saw possibility. She saw people looking out for each other, children learning to trust their instincts and speak up, parents finding the courage to let their kids walk into the world again, a little wiser, a little braver. The school year rolled forward. Morning routines became more than just hurried breakfasts and lost backpacks. They were lessons in resilience. Students practiced code words with their parents, learned what to do when approached by strangers, and, most importantly, learned that it was okay to be scared as long as you didn't let fear make you silent. One afternoon, as Harper finished a talk for the fifth graders, a boy tugged at her sleeve. "Officer Evans, will Ranger stay forever?" She smiled, ruffling the boy's hair. "As long as he's needed, and then some." That evening, Harper stopped by the park with Mia and Ranger. The playground was busy again. Parents on benches, children on swings, laughter drifting up into the gold of late afternoon. Harper watched Mia climb, bold and fearless, calling out for her to watch. She caught the eye of another mother who smiled. A silent moment of gratitude and understanding passed between them. The sense of collective relief was palpable, fragile, but growing stronger each day. A local journalist, covering the story for a feature, approached Harper near the picnic tables. "Do you think the program will make a difference?" she asked, pen poised over her notepad. Harper considered. "I think it already has. We're not just reacting anymore. We're preparing, watching out for each other. It's not about being afraid all the time. It's about being ready, and about reminding our kids and ourselves that courage is sometimes just doing the next right thing, even if your voice shakes." As dusk settled, Harper sat on the grass, Mia leaning against her, Ranger sprawled at their feet. She let her mind wander, no longer to what might go wrong, but to what could be made right. The community was not perfect. There would always be threats, always shadows at the edges. But there would also always be people willing to step forward, to stand between danger and innocence, and to meet the darkness with light. Harper closed her eyes, listening to the soft murmur of the town, the laughter of children, the gentle breathing of the dog who'd changed everything. She understood finally that community was not the absence of danger. It was the presence of people who refused to let danger have the last word. And as she looked up at the first stars appearing in the sky, Harper felt, maybe for the first time since this all began, that they were going to be okay. Late summer draped Lincoln Grove in golden light, cicadas humming in the trees, and laughter floating from the park across the street. The wounds of spring, the fear, the suspicion, the sleepless nights, had not disappeared, but time had dulled their sharpest edges. The town had changed, but so had Harper Evans. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Harper watched Mia run barefoot across the grass, the sunlight caught in her wild hair. Ranger lay sprawled nearby, half dozing, one ear perked to every giggle and thud. The world felt softer, if only for the moment, fragile and fierce all at once. Harper leaned back on the old wooden bench, letting her mind drift over everything that had brought them here. The growl that had shattered routine, the chase through wet streets, the hollow ache of holding frightened children and furious parents, the nights staring at screens and praying she hadn't missed something. All of it had left marks, some visible, most hidden, but she carried them as proof of what mattered. Across the field, a group of kids clustered around Ranger, hands outstretched, faces lit with curiosity and awe. Ranger lifted his head, tail thumping in the dust, greeting each one with the patient, regal calm of a dog who had seen the worst of people but still chose trust. For so many in Lincoln Grove, he was more than a hero. He was the promise that someone, somewhere, was always watching out. Harper's phone buzzed with messages. News of more arrests, new K-9 units, starting at other schools, another child missing but found safe because a teacher noticed a pattern and trusted her gut. She replied with brief thanks, her words simple but sincere. Keep watching. Keep listening. It matters. Mia darted over, breathless, cheeks flushed. Mom, did you see how fast Ranger runs now? I think he could chase anybody. Harper smiled, scooping her daughter into her lap. He's the best there is. You know why? Because he never gives up. And he always trusts his instincts. Mia leaned in close, whispering, like you, Mom. Harper hesitated, then nodded. Like all of us. When something feels wrong, we listen, even if it's just a little growl. Mia's laughter was soft and bright. Harper pressed her face into her daughter's hair, letting the warmth of the moment fill the spaces that fear had once occupied. She realized that courage was never the absence of fear. It was the insistence on hope in the face of it. That lesson, hard-earned, was the one she wanted to share with every parent, every child, every teacher still haunted by what-ifs. As the sun dropped behind the trees, parents called their kids home, voices echoing across the grass. Harper gathered Mia's shoes, called for Ranger, and watched him lope across the field, his gait slow, dignified, a king returning to his post. They walked home together, the three of them, a little family held together by loyalty, by instinct, by the stubborn refusal to let the darkness win. Later that night, as Mia slept and Ranger lay at the foot of the bed, Harper sat by the window, pen in hand, trying to put the story into words. She wrote not just about the danger, but about what came after. The moments when neighbors came together, when teachers changed routines, when children learned to say no and trust their own voice. She wrote about the way people could change, the way fear could become strength, the way hope could be the first thing to return after chaos. She ended her letter with a message, not just for Lincoln Grove, but for anyone listening. Sometimes, the best protection doesn't come from fear. It comes from instinct, loyalty, and the ones who never hesitate to stand between danger and a child. Our world isn't perfect, but every time you trust your gut, every time you look out for someone else, every time you refuse to look away from what scares you, you become someone's shield. And sometimes that's enough to change everything. She paused, letting the words settle, knowing they would ripple out into the world in ways she might never see. The next morning, Lincoln Grove Elementary held its first Paw Patrol open house. Parents and children walked the halls, meeting the new K-9 teams, learning about safety, sharing stories and laughter. Ranger wore his badge and bandana, posing for photos, basking in the attention. Harper stood by, talking with parents, listening to their worries, sharing what she'd learned, that courage could be taught, that communities could be transformed, that no act of kindness was ever wasted. Before she left, the principal asked if she would say a few words. Harper stood on the steps, Mia and Ranger beside her, and spoke from the heart. We can't erase fear, from our lives. But we can decide what to do with it. We can protect each other. We can listen to our instincts, to our children, to each other. We can build something stronger than fear, trust, hope, community. And sometimes all it takes is one voice, one growl, one act of courage to change the story for everyone. As the crowd applauded, Harper caught the eye of a teacher she barely knew, a woman who'd once looked scared and defeated. Now her face was bright with possibility. Afterward, Harper took Mia and Ranger for ice cream. They sat on the curb, laughing as Ranger tried to lick both cones at once, their joy spilling out onto the warm sidewalk. Harper thought of all the days ahead, uncertain, imperfect, but lit by the knowledge that, together, they could face anything. And in the simple sweetness of that afternoon, Harper found her answer, her hope, her reason to keep standing guard, to keep loving, to keep believing that, because of one growl, one dog, one community that refused to give in, the world could be changed, one story at a time.